In this presentation, we will create a journal entries report, a report that will show our adjusting journal entries and our reversing entries, as well as the financial statements, including the balance sheet and income statement or profit and loss within QuickBooks Pro 2019. For more accounting information and accounting courses, visit our website at accountinginstruction.info. Here we are in the home page. We currently have the open windows open. In order to open the open windows, we go to the view drop down and select the open windows list. We're going to do some journal entries and print some reports for journal entries that were created. We're not going to enter journal entries. We are going to create reports to show the journal entries that have been created for our adjusting entries. To do this, let's first take a look at the balance sheet. If we go to the reports drop down and we go to the company and financial, take a look at our balance sheet standard. Then we're going to change the dates up top in the customized reports. We're going to go to the date range of 01/01/19 to 12, let's make it 02/28/19. We made these reports as of the cutoff date of February 28, 2019. Okay. So here is our balance sheet. In order to make the balance sheet correct as of this cutoff date, we had to do some adjusting journal entries. This will be typical with many accounting processes. We're gonna enter data. We're gonna have to do some adjustments if we want the data to be on as good an accrual basis as possible. And then we may do some reversing entries in order to reverse some of those to separate the accounting department from the adjusting process. If we're a smaller company, we may not do those every month. We might do it yearly. We might have our accountant or CPA at the end of the year help us with those adjusting entries, or we may do it on a monthly basis. But if we're going to show the reports either for ourselves for decision making or to external users such as bank or someone else and the IRS possibly, then we would ideally need to have the adjusting entries in there in order to have them be properly reflected. So what we want to do now is check those reports, and it's very useful if we're working with an external person, a CPA firm or someone, to give us a report of these adjusting entries and see exactly what they did, what are the adjustments versus the normal kind of transactions that have been taking place. To do that, we're going to go to reports up top. We are going to go to accounting and taxes. And the report we want to take a look at is the journal. So we'll take a look at the journal. So it's reports, accounting and taxes, and then the journal. We're going to say OK. And we're going to say that this is a report. We just want the adjusting entries. Those are the ones that are going to be as of the end of the time period. So we just want one day to be covered here. And that's going to be 02/28/19, 02/28/19. So that'll be the beginning and ending date. This will pick up all the transactions, including our adjusting entries, which are going to be typically journal entries that we have entered. So this is like an adjusting entry tip because it's a journal. So the journal entries are going to be the ones that are usually going to be the adjusting entries that we have. And everything else here is something that happened as of the end of that last day of the month, the last day of the cutoff. So what we would like to do is edit this so that we just see the adjusting entries, or as few transactions including the adjusting entries as possible. One way we could do this is sort this by type. So we're going to sort by type by going up to the customized reports up top. We're going to go to the filters tab. So we'll select the filters tab. And then we've got, these are the types of things that we can filter by. What we want to filter by is this column, type, because we want to pick the general journal. Now, when you go through here, you would think you would just have a drop down saying type, but it's going to say something a bit different. Actually, I'm going to go through here. You would think it would just say type, but it says something a little bit different. I believe within here it's called transaction type, but we should be able to find here. It's in order by alphabetical order, but it's not using just type, I don't believe. So we're just going to scroll down and see if we can find the type area. So there's templates, then transaction type. So that should be the one. So we want to sort then, or filter by this type column. And then the ones that we want, we got to pick these. Do we want to check? Do we want that? We obviously want the general journal. So we're looking here for the general journal is the item that we want to sort by. And again, you would think in here it would be called general journal, but in here, they just call it, I believe, journal. So we just want the journal. So we're looking for transaction, which ties out to the transaction type. And then the journal, which is going to tie out to the general journal, is what we want. So when we say OK, then it's going to have this information, and it will only be showing those transactions that were entered into the general journal. Now, this may not limit it just to our adjusting entries, because there could be some other things that we entered into a journal. Remember that the default for QuickBooks is to use a form like a check, a bill, and that being the driving documentation that records the journal entry. But if there is no driving documentation, if it's not like a normal transaction as when we purchased the equipment and financed the entire thing, then QuickBooks will typically default or go to the last resort, which is just a journal. So it is possible that we'll have more than just the adjusting entries here, but most of the stuff here will be the adjusting journal entries because we used the journal to do so. You'll recall that as we did this, we didn't actually use the journal entry. Instead, we used the registers. So we went to the registers, but it's still considered a general journal for QuickBooks. Those registers are kind of like the default to enter the journal entries in such a way that we can think about ups and downs instead of debits and credits. But here you can see that this report is going to be formatted in the format of the debits and credits. And most CPA firms or accountants would probably do these adjusting entries with debits and credits. It's almost easier than using the ledgers. So we can see the debits and credits. It's difficult to avoid the debits and credits when entering the adjusting entries. So if you go through these adjusting entries, then we should basically match these out to what we have entered in our adjusting process. And if we were working with a bookkeeping or doing the adjusting entries outside of the system, say having someone do the entries at the end of the year, then this is a nice report that can be provided to the client, and then we can see what those are, and possibly, if this was done outside the system, then enter this information into our system so that we have the adjusting entries in the system. So we had an adjusting entry. We have the memos column here. We can obviously make the columns wider or smaller. We had, this one was an actual loan for the equipment. So notice this is not an adjusting entry. That's a loan for the equipment that we had here. The adjusting entries will have the memo here. So here's an adjusting entry for the loans. Here's the adjusting entry for the current portion of the loans again. Here's an adjusting entry for interest payable. This is for the accounts receivable for that invoice that was entered in March that should have been in the revenue should belong in February. Prepaid insurance adjusting entry, accumulated depreciation, and unearned revenue. Those are going to be kind of typical type of adjusting entries that we will see. We're going to go ahead and export this to Excel now, and then we'll also print it as a PDF file and look at the couple different ways that we can present this information if we needed to. Notice it's a little long. If we make this memo so that we can see it all, then it may be longer than 1 page wide, and we want to think about, okay, well, how can we present this thing so that we can see the memo and we can fit it in on 1 page. So to do that, let's go to Excel. I'm going to create a new workbook, and we are going to put it in a new worksheet. The last one was a worksheet. This is a workbook. We're going to put it into a new workbook as well and export. And Excel will then create an Excel workbook with a worksheet within it and put this information into that workbook and worksheet. So here it is, and these are going to be the adjusting entries. I'm going to double click here and rename. So I double clicked on this tab and renamed it adjusting entries. We'll put here. And then if we go to the top, we always want to go to view and windows and unsplit the panes. Then if we check this tab, we can see where the breaks are, but the page layout over here will give us more definition about the page breaks and why they're kind of a problem if we were to print this out or save it as a PDF. So if we go back to the normal view, we want to clean that up a bit and see if we can get rid of these page breaks. So one way to do that is we can go to the view tab up top, or let's go to the layout tab. And then we're going to go to the page settings group and the orientation, and we'll go to landscape as the orientation. So that's pretty close to fixing the problem. The other thing we can do is we don't really need this total column, and we don't need these little sub columns, so we could adjust those. So I'm going to put my cursor where we have the drop down here. I'm holding down Control so that I can highlight non-adjacent columns. And this one, this one, this one, this one, this one, M, O, and Q, we don't need that. I let go of Control. And then I put my cursor on the selected area and right click, and then we can delete those. And that's one way we can get it down on one sheet. So I'm not too worried about if it goes more than one sheet long, but it shouldn't go really more than one sheet wide. That's what we would be more concerned with. So that's going to be this information. We're going to print a couple of reports, save them here, and we could then give this documentation to a bookkeeper or someone else, or our supervisor or something like that. Notice another benefit that we have here is we can do a little bit more editing that might be a little bit easier in QuickBooks in Excel than it would in QuickBooks. For example, this one we said wasn't an adjusting entry. So if we don't want this in our adjusting entry worksheets and we couldn't find a way to really sort it out within QuickBooks, we can do it here by just putting our cursor right there and deleting, highlighting these columns, right click and delete. And then you just want to make sure that this column may need a new reference. So we don't really even need the total here. I mean, we know it's going to be in balance. So we could just delete this, or you can add up the totals again. But I'm just going to say right click and delete. And so we can clean that up a bit. And this is a report that we can then use. If this column needs to be a little wider, we can make it a little wider and still fit it on a page there. So let's go ahead and save this. I'm going to go File, Save As. We're going to put this somewhere where we can find it, hopefully. And we're going to go into Get Great Guitars. Going to put it on the reports. We're going to put it in section 9, I believe. Is that what we're on? We're on section 9. Actually, we're on section 10. So I'm going to go back to reports. I'm going to make a new folder, and we'll call it section 10. And we'll put this information into the section 10 folder, and I'll just call the whole thing section 10. So sorting this stuff is going to be half the battle, so we got to sort this out. So we're going to say close that. Next thing we're going to do is, now we want to do the same thing, but we had the reversing entries, and those happened at the first day of the next month. So I'm just going to go to this report and say +1, and that'll take it to March 1st of 2019, +1, March 1st of 2019. So we had to enter the last ones in to make the financial statements correct. Then we entered these in order to not mess up what we're doing to the books for the bookkeeping purposes, to make that transaction transition as smooth as possible. So here are these adjustments, and also these are important if we want to provide these to a client or a supervisor, or if we just want to remind ourselves this is what we did as of the end of the time period. Useful reports to have so we know what those adjustments are, because they can be a little bit unusual as compared to the normal kind of processing. So we'll do the same thing here. I'm going to export this to Excel, but this time to the same workbook. We are going to have a new worksheet, and we are going to put it to the same workbook, however. So we're going to go to an existing workbook. We're going to browse in order to find that workbook. And we're going to select the drop down. It's going to Get Great Guitars, Reports. We want to put it into section 10 this time. Section 10. And there is section 10, and that's the one we're going to have. So it should open that up once we export it, and put a new tab on there, which will be our next adjusting entry tab, or our reversing entry tab. As it does that, note that the reversing entries, there's 3 of them. We didn't reverse all of them. In other words, we only reverse the ones that are going to be needing reversal because they could interfere with the process next time. And the only way to really get good at that and know which ones those are just basically to practice to do these a few times to do those. So we reversed the invoice that we had to put into the proper time period. Otherwise, it would have recorded it twice. We reversed the accrued interest, and we reversed our unearned revenue. And note this last one's a little bit different. If unearned revenue in a book problem, which would be in there a little bit different way. you wouldn't have the reversing entry. So just note, when we talked about unearned revenue, the difference between what we did here and what's often done could be done in practice. You'll see in practice as an adjustment here could differ from the traditional unearned revenue book problem, in which case the book problem would not typically have something that would be reversed. It would be a permanent type of adjustment. Okay, so we're going to go back here, and so it made a new tab. So I'm going to pull this to the right. Now I'm going to pull it all the way to the right, and I'm going to double click on it, and these are going to be reverse entries, something like that. And we'll do the same thing to it. So it doesn't fit on a page. So I'm going to go to view first. We'll go to view, windows, and unsplit the panes. If we go to the layouts, so we go to the layouts, we can see it doesn't fit on a page. Going back to the normal. Then we can go to the page layout tab. We can go to the orientation, and landscape. And then if that doesn't do it, we go back through it and we delete all these columns again that we don't really need, like column A, holding down Control, C, E, G, I, K, M, O, Q. And then let go of Control, right click on the selected area, and delete. So there we have that, and then we can make some of these rows a little larger. If you just put your cursor in the middle and double click, it'll make it as large as it needs to be. And so now we went a little too large here, and so we could do some more adjustment, possibly in the split area, or possibly we make this back down a little bit. Now if we couldn't figure it out, if we say, hey, I need all this, that's what I need, this is what I need, then we could go to the reports file over here and go to print, and then on this sheet we're going to scale it and fit on one page wide. So it'll pull this debit over. You'll see if you pull this over, then it pulls it over. Now you kind of want to avoid that though, because now this one is pretty small in relation to other reports. So if we print them all on the same types of reports, the font here will look small and funny compared to the other reports. But if we got to do that, then that's what we got to do. And notice that it doesn't then show us the page breaks anymore, because it's just going to force it to do whatever it's got to do to fit on one page. So we'll go ahead and save that, and we'll close this for now. Next, we're going to take a look at the standard reports at the end of the time period, which is going to be the balance sheet and the income statement. We won't do anything fancy to them. We'll just go to the balance sheet here, and it looks good as of the end of the month. That's our cutoff date. So we're going to take that and we're going to export that to Excel. So we're going to go to Excel and create a new worksheet. We're going to take that to our existing workbook that we have set up and browse to locate that. Drop down up top. We're going to go to Reports. And section 10 is where we put it. We want to put that section 10 worksheet there and export once again. Should then open that Excel sheet back up, create a new tab, put the balance sheet within it. So here we have it. We're going to go ahead and pull this all the way to the right. So I'm going to just grab it with left click, pulling it to the right, double click on it, call it the balance sheet, balance sheet, something like that. And then we'll go to the views, we'll go to windows and unsplit. And that's really all we need to do for this one. This one should be good. And we'll keep that. Now we'll just do the profit and loss. So I'm going to go to close this, save it. Probably want to save before you close, but it does ask you to save, so you can do that. But it's a little risky. It's a little risky to do it that way. Probably want to save before closing. And then we'll go to reports. And we will go to the company and financial. We're looking for the income statement or the profit and loss. So we're going to take a look at the profit and loss. And we may want to do it for the month or for the year, the month to date. Our cutoff date was the end of February, or we could do a comparison again. I'll do for the second month this time, which is 02/01/19 to 02/28/19. So if we were to present this to others, they may want one report with both periods on it. In other words, we might want to have a report for the month of January, a report for the revenue of February, a report for the revenue of January and February, the 2-month time period, and possibly even a comparative report that has the month 1 and month 2 and the difference in the change. So it just depends on how much detail we want to give in terms of our reporting. Are we trying to impress people with more, reports, or are we trying to condense the information and not confuse people with less reports? So that's what we'll have here. We're just going to do the month the second month of February here. So here we have this. We're going to export this. We'll go to Excel and create a new worksheet once again. And once again, it's going to go to an existing workbook. Browse to find that information. Drop down. I'm not sure why it doesn't always go right where I would think it would go, but Reports, Section 10, double-clicking Section 10, and Export. And here we have it. I'm going to go ahead and pull this to the right. Once again, grabbing it, pulling it to the right, double-clicking on it. We're going to call it Profit and Loss, or P&L. I usually go to the View tab, Windows, and get rid of that split panes once again. So there we have it. Now, this is what we're going to give to someone. We've got the 4 reports and then this added tab here. So I'm going to get rid of this added tab, clicking on it, right-click and delete, and OK. Now, notice how this Excel helps us to format it a little bit. We can clean it up a little bit. We can get rid of some things if we want. If we want to give this to someone, we can with just one document to give this to someone who has Excel, or we can print it as a PDF, and instead of having 4 PDFs, we can put it on one PDF with 4 documents to it. So to do that, we would go to the File, we'd go to Print, and then we would use that Qt PDF printer, which is free, or some other kind of printer that prints to a PDF. If I was to print this, it would print a PDF file. Now, it defaults to only having that one sheet. We're going to say print the entire workbook. And then you can see the display over here will show us we got the adjusting entries. Then we have the journal for the reversing entries. And then we've got the balance sheet. And then we have the balance sheet, again, the last part of it. And I'm not really worried about this. Notice I could put that on one page, this balance sheet, but I'm not really worried about it being two pages long. It's still showing the balance sheet. If it were 2 pages wide, then it's kind of ugly. And then we'll go to the next one, and that'll be the profit and loss or income statement. So there we have those reports. Note that you could trim this stuff down. Again, it's all about the presentation of these. You could call these the adjusting journal entries reports or something, like change the name of the reports, and that could be done in QuickBooks or in Excel here. So that way we can have this one document with 5 pages in it. And so I'm going to close this and close this, save that, save that. The other way we can do this, of course, is to export all of these to a PDF, which we can do by going to File, Save as PDF, or if that's not working, or sometimes it's just easier to use that print as a PDF and go to Print Report, and then I'm going to say go to that Qt PDF printer, print it, and then find where we want it, and we're going to go to Reports, Section 10, and I'm just going to call this the P and L for February, and then we'll go to the balance sheet, we'll go to Print, the report, let's go into the Qt PDF, OK, and then we're going to call this balance sheet for February. And then the tricky one is going to be this journal here. We've got the journal, which we had one for the prior month and one for the current month. If we go to File, or if we go to Print, and we go back to File, and then we want to go to the Print Report, and then the Preview, then this one, it's possible that this could end up not fitting on one page. Right here, it's got it on one page. If we widen the cell anymore, it's possible that it doesn't fit on one page wide, and we have to adjust the columns and make sure that we get it all fit down on one page. So I'm going to close this back out. And notice it's kind of defaulting to do that because we've got this check down here, fit report to 1 page wide. And so it's checking that basically by the default. So that's helping us out right there to do that. Notice again, once we force it like that, it may change the font size in relation to the balance sheet or the profit and loss if they're opening multiple documents. So I'm going to go ahead and print this one. And this is going to be the reversing entries. And then we've got the one more, which we had one day before this. This is for February 28th versus March 1st. And these are the adjusting entries. And notice again, I can't really get rid of this one as easily, which is not an adjusting entry here in this format as we could in Excel. So then if we print this and we print the report, Qt PDF, print it, that's going to be the next one, and this is going to be the adjusting entries. So again, if we do it this way, now we've got 4 reports that we've got to attach instead of, or a zipped file to give to someone, as opposed to one report, one PDF file with all our reports. So it's up to you on how you want to group this, how you want to format it for presentation purposes. For more accounting information and accounting courses, visit our website at accountinginstruction.info.